In the previous post, I demonstrated how to edit, tailor the layout of the calculating template, the master template version 16, which is current template. How to edit and tailor the look and layout of the template to suit your needs. And it really, in a nutshell, just amounts to hiding rows that you don't need or don't need right now, I should say, and hiding columns that you don't need right now. And that is basically it in a nutshell. And that takes a couple minutes, even if you're using this huge big master template, which most often you are not. But that's how it's done. In short order, you come up with something that looks more like a formula in a kitchen guidebook or a cookbook. Anyway, this is the layout that I use, and it starts with the total formula, all of the ingredients, their baker's percentages, and their weights, and then any sub-formula like pre-ferment doughs that are being made that effectively become ingredients in the final dough mix. So what you're actually making are these two preparations, and then you're doing the final dough mix once these have ripened and become fully active. So this is a usable template, and what I want to do is I want to show how to write a formula two ways using the Unabaker's formula writer. So the first way is how professionals normally do it, which is starting from the baker's percentages, and this thing will derive the individual ingredient weights. So what you do to begin with is you enter a value for total dough weight. That can be whatever you want. Calculator will take that value, and based on the percentages that you enter here and here and here, it'll derive the weights of all the ingredients in all of the stages for you. So first things first, enter a value for the total dough weight that you're looking to make today, right now. Select the ingredients that you want from the drop-down list. Okay. Each ingredient line has a drop-down list with flours. There's a lot of flours. Water. There's other liquids that you might use to make your dough. Salt. There's optional choices for salt. Yeast. 3 different types. Basically, I'm using this. This is what a lot of bakers use in their shops, but this is very easy to use. Pouliche is a French-style pre-fermented dough, but you might be making Italian bread and want to use a stiffer pre-fermented dough. Pouliches tend to be rather soft, be a little bit more firm. And the levain is a naturally fermented pre-ferment dough, and it goes by various names, which you can choose depending on what the tradition of baking you're using or what you're used to calling it. Leaven is what Chad Robertson from Tartine Bakery calls it. I normally call it levain, which is a French word. So we're going to make a pain de campagne. So we're going to make a pouliche and a levain in this case. You don't need to make both, but I'm going to demonstrate how to use 2 different pre-ferment doughs. So the first things, enter desired total dough weight, select the names of the ingredients you want to use, and then just start entering baker's percentages. Now I'm going to try to keep this in the ballpark Ponde Campagna. I'm just entering figures, but that's kind of roughly it. And I want this to be 70% hydration. Salt is normally around 2%. It doesn't have to be. It can be like that, or if you're from Tuscany, it can be like that. If you're watching your salt, you can do like that. Anyway, 1.82 is typical. Yeast, I don't use much because it's warm in Thailand. I just use a pinch to go in the poolish. I don't need extra in the final dough mix because I've got 2 pre-fermented doughs that are going to inoculate the final dough mix. So as long as I develop the poolish and the levain properly, this is going to work just fine, particularly in this climate. If you're working in a cooler climate or a cooler room, you might put more. It doesn't matter. We can put a value in there just to fill it in, to show you what I'm doing. So you enter all the baker's percentages. Note that there's nothing that go here because these are just so that they show up as ingredients here. But you don't make the poolish as an ingredient in the total formula. The poolish you use is part of the ingredients in the total formula to make it. You use part of the ingredients to make the levain, so there's no values here. But whatever you come up with here, 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 and here, the gram weights carry over. So the next thing you have to do to make this thing work is you have to select an amount of flour that you want to use to make the pre-ferment dough. And the way I do it is kind of standard. I use a percentage of the total weight of the flour in the total formula. Other bakers do different things, and down below I show the other 2 major ways of doing it, but this is how I do it, and it's fairly standard. They all work. You have to pick one. So poolish is normally 100% hydration, and it's normally made with just that flour, but it doesn't have to be. You can use other flour in there to change the profile. It's all good. 100% hydration normally. All right, so I'm mimicking the total amount of yeast in the formula, using it all here, and that's not correct. I've got 0.58. I'm using part of that in the poolish, not much. This is not much more than a pinch of yeast, and that's all you need because you're going to ripen this at room temperature for 10 hours. If you do it in the refrigerator overnight, you're probably going to do that, in which case you're going to use it all in there and there won't be any here. I don't need that much, and I don't want any there, so I'm just going to change it so it works out that way. So I'm using exactly what I need to make the poolish from the total formula. There's nothing going to go in the final dough mix. So enter again the percentage of flour you want to use to make the levain. It can be whatever you want. Normally, pre-ferment dough inoculation for the final dough mix is 15 to 25%. There's 25. It can be higher. Different chefs do different things. It's part of their production schedule and the demands on that schedule, room temperatures, all kinds of things go into making that decision. But 15 to 25% is kind of normal. Let's just do the same thing. So the levain can actually be all one flour or not. But whole wheat and rye make a levain pretty active, so I'm going to put a little bit in there. Once again, a lot of chefs use 100% hydration. It doesn't have to be. This thing will figure out the total formula hydration, which I specified to be 70. It'll figure that out no matter what the figures are here. So I can change this to 90%, which would be a non-standard, or 130, which you sometimes see poolish, that wet or more. But it's typically 100, and chefs like that number because it's easy. This can be mimicking the overall formula hydration, or it could be any different number you so choose. This thing will still figure it out so that the total dough formula hydration will be whatever you put in here. Okay, so let's just use 65%, which is kind of classical French bread hydration, just to fill in the blanks. Now we filled in all of the white cells. The white cells in my template are for data entry. Any cells that have gray or color fill have embedded formula that do the calculating and make the spreadsheet work. So you don't do anything in there. If you accidentally enter something in there, you could just hit the shortcut key on your keyboard for undoing that, and you're back. If you don't know the shortcut key, you can go up to the menu bar of your program and hit edit, and it'll probably have the word undo there, and you just click undo, undo, undo until you get it back to where it was. This is why you don't mess with the master template, because if you screw things up, you've got the master, you can rejigger it to make it look like this again. So here we are. We wanted a 1,000 gram lump of dough at 70% hydration with this flour profile at these percentages. And this is what we wound up with. We specified this, and we wound up with 115.46 grams. It carries over as an ingredient into the final mix. We did the same thing here by filling in the blanks. All the white cells have to be filled in. And we got 103.86, and it carries over as an ingredient there. So the total dough weight and the final dough mix weight is 1,000 grams, and this matches. So the formula works. And I know this will produce a good loaf of bread, but what you would do at this point is do a test bake. Just bake it and see what you think of it. Maybe you go, oh, I think I'm going to do more of this and less of this next time. I like that. And instead of 70, let's punch it up to 72. See what that does. And we could do 2% of salt. That's not going to hurt things. And the starter was fine. The yeast was fine. It rose well. Maybe it didn't rise well. And you go, okay, let's do more yeast. Next time. That's what you do. You do a test bake, and then you tweak it, and you do another test bake, and keep doing that until you come up with something you love, and then that's it. That's your copy that you always want to keep, and you never change this. Once you've done a test bake, you keep it, duplicate the tab. I'm sorry. Duplicate the tab, and then you do the tweaking on this dupe. All right. So you do a breadcrumb trail on and on and on until you get to the point where you love it, and then you drag that one back over here, and that's the one that goes into your file as your standard. You can get rid of the test bake breadcrumb trail if you want at that point, but not until you're satisfied with it. But this is going to produce a nice loaf of bread. I know from experience. Why wouldn't it? It's going to taste good. So that's how you do it from the start using Baker's percentages. So it works from left to right. You can see that the ingredients, when you choose these, they're carried over here. You don't have to, see, these are linked. You don't have to enter it again. it's there. Let's get rid of this. Maybe when you tweak it, you change this or this, up or down. That's part of the fun of baking, is you just see what happens and then you make an adjustment and you get it to where you like it and then you stop. And that's what you make the next time you make pan de campagne. But I almost never do that. Every time I make it a little bit different, and it's all bread to me. I'm not trying to make the perfect pan de campagne every time. It's like, I want a loaf of bread and I want something that tastes like that. So I'll do this. And if it's less than ideal, I'll know it, but it's going to taste good. And it's only one day. Now, the other way of doing a formula right is using the reverse engineering template. And what that does is it works from the right to the left. And instead of entering baker's percentages and deriving gram weights for all the ingredients, you enter gram weights and derive the baker's percentages. So you see, this is all derived values here in the final mix. In the final mix here, you have to enter the values and you derive the results over here. So let's clean this up and start fresh. All right, so these things go away as soon as you enter some values. So what you do is, you're in your kitchen. This is how a lot of people make bread. I make it like this all the time in my kitchen. It's not the professional way to do it, but professional chefs don't always start with baker's percentages. What I do typically is I'll come out and get a cup of coffee in the morning. I go, let's make some bread today, and let's make a 100% hydrated poolish, just like that. Let me put 1/10 of a gram in there, and let's make a refreshed starter, and we'll do the same thing. Make it 100% because that's easy, and I'm going to put 5 grams in there. So I'm going to put 10 times the weight of starter in flour. So this is going to go slow, but that's okay. You could make this 10. You could make it 15. It's just going to go faster if you do that. But let's make it 5. And instead of just doing 50 of that, let's do 40 of that, 5 of that, 5 of that. And that's going to make the levain bubble away a little bit faster too, because yeast loves this stuff here. So I've got that filled out. You don't have to put anything in here, but if you're not using it, you can put it in there so it doesn't look like you forgot something. And then over here, what I want to do is I go, okay, what hydration do I want to make it? Oh, let's see. Let's make it 72%. So I have to kind of guesstimate. I don't have to. I can get my calculator out and figure it out, but it's not hard. You can say, okay, I want about 1,000 grams, and I want about 72% hydration, and I want that flavor profile, mostly bread flour, some whole wheat, and a little bit less rye. And then how do I get it to 72? Well, based on this and knowing there's 100 grams more flour, that's 560. Well, I can just multiply that times 0.72, right? So that's about, all right, there we are. We're kind of on it now. So you're doing it this way, you're kind of goofing around a little bit. Like I said, it's not the professional way, but it'll get you home. And you can keep doing it until you get right on the nose, pretty much. Why would you do that, though? You don't have to. It's not going to make a big difference. But there's a 72. Salt. We got 560 grams of flour. Salt normally around 2%. So that looks like 11 grams to me. Close enough. Yeast. I don't need any extra yeast in here. But maybe it's a cold day and I decide, okay, let's put an extra gram of yeast in there. I've got this and I've got this. These are both yeasted ingredients that are going in here, so I don't really need it, but sometimes you want to speed things up, or maybe it's cold. You make judgments like that. But anyway, again, the basic idea is you fill in the white cells with values, and the spreadsheet's going to calculate. So I'm almost at 1,000 grams. I say, well, that's not enough. What am I going to do about that? Let's make it 350. Now the hydration's down. There we are, back up to 72, and that's good enough for government work, isn't it? So now I've got all these derived values. It tells me what the amount of flour I used, the percentage. And I used about 18, 16, 17%, I guess. 17%. That's enough, but maybe I want to use more, so I could do this. All right. Total hydration dropped a little bit. We're back on it. So now I'm kind of where I want to be. I'll take this and I'll make it. What do I do to make it? I make this. Now I make this. When they're ripe and ready, they go in here as ingredients. You can see where that copies over. So that's the other way of making it in reverse, using weights. And that's a pretty casual but common way people do, and I do it in my kitchen in the morning. I just come out and say, let's make 100 grams or so of Polish and 100 grams or so of Laban, and then I'll figure these values out to get there and to get there. So I could do it differently. I could say, I don't want to make 1,000, I want to make around 800. So let's say 280 instead, and 70 instead, and 40 instead. And then I'm going to cut this back to 275. That's still a little high. So now I'm back around 72, which is the mark I was looking for. And I'm still a little bit high, so I could keep doing this until I do that, but usually I don't. I just say, okay, I'm going to make 1,000 grams today, whatever. But I'm more interested in hitting this mark. That'll be a target for me, and it might often be 68, or it could be 80 or 85 if I'm making a ciabatta. But that's good for pan de campagna. It's a little high, in fact, but it's okay. It's going to work fine. So that's the other way of doing it. Start with the weights and derive the total formula values, all of them. Or you start at the total formula and plug in percentages you want for your formula and do the same thing for these things and derive the final mix. So this is the standard way of doing it. This is a casual but often used way of writing a formula. I'm never writing a formula to say, I want to make the world's best baguette. You know, some people focus in on that and they get really good at it. Me, I just want to make bread and I want it to be good, and I'm good at it, so I don't have to worry about it too much. It's not always the formula that makes the difference. It's how you mix it, how you handle it, and the processing parameters, what the water temperature was you used to make these, okay, what the temperature in your room is, how long you fermented, all of that stuff goes into it. But anyway, that's the quick little demonstration on how to write a formula two different ways. And then I'm going to do a follow-up post eventually on this template itself, because this has more value than just writing, formulas in a sort of offhand fashion. This becomes really useful when you want to analyze what other bakers are doing, and they don't give you this data. Tartine bread cookbook, he doesn't give you this. He gives you this, this, and this. And the baker's percentages he gives for this are not the real formula baker's percentages. This is what you need. This is the logical structure of the formula. And you don't get that from Tartine Bread Cookbook, because that's not the way he does it in his shop. He has a bucket of Polish and a bucket of Levant going and a bunch of different types of each all the time, and his bakers just go to the walk-in or wherever it's stored, scoop out a bunch, go and scale it, and they make a batch. And they're not making batches like that. They're probably making batches like this, or who knows, I don't know what the production level is there these days. Batches like that. Then they'll just go and get enough Polish, and you see, when you change that value, everything else changes. But because these are the logical structure, all of this stuff changes. It's derivative data. But until you change this, it's the same formula, no matter what that number is. It's the exact same formula. So that's one of the values of this, is you can upscale or downscale. You can do ridiculous things with this calculator that you would never do in the real world, but look, the thing figures it out. And it's precise. There are no errors when you use this. So there you go. That concludes the demonstration. I hope you enjoyed that. Take care.